So I think we've heard quite a bit about the barriers facing this group. So would anybody like to kick it off about what you think are the barriers? And when we're talking about children and young people, where do we want to sort of say, is that up to 24? Or are we going to stop at 18? Should we just kind of, where are we going to? What do we define as young people? Up to 24? 26? Anybody want to come in with a suggestion?
Shall we go 24?
24? Yeah. I was just thinking that's sort of young adults, isn't it? So, but still sort of forming their view of life and what they're about. They may think they've got it all sorted, but yes, those of us who are older know that you never get it sorted. So some barriers facing this group. Should we think about the barriers mostly for kids from about the age of 10 upwards? Because you know, once kids start to go to secondary school, then they have a greater degree of autonomy. Up until when they're in primary school, very much they tend to be much more taken places by their parents. Whereas once they've started going to school on their own, then that's the time I think when they start to become a bit more independent. And I'm just thinking, so does anybody have any experience of the barriers faced by sort of the 10 to 18-year-olds?
I suppose I'm going to turn my camera on actually this evening. Hi, I'm Rowan. I'm from the Garden Classroom, charity based in London. We actually mainly work with primary school children, but do some work with older children. And so this is more, rather than from experiences, it's more kind of just my observations. I suppose kind of attitude towards nature not being, this could be a sweeping generalisation, but maybe not seen as being very cool, or, you know, other things becoming more appealing in those years, basically.
Yes, it's interesting that the outdoors isn't seen as cool. Do we know why not? It's a really interesting observation, Rowan. Can you give us any sort of?
Well, as I said, this is just from personal experience, but then I think about back to my teenage years, and actually, ironically, I did spend quite a lot of time in nature, but in I suppose hanging out with your friends in the park. So maybe you are in nature, but your view is, you're kind of in terms of maybe exploration of nature isn't top of your priorities because other things are coming into play, and, you know, other interests. And yeah, I don't know, this is just, as I said, it's the children I'm working with are actually normally a bit younger, but I was just kind of thinking what a potential barrier might be from my personal experience in the past. But why it's not seen as cool, I'm not so sure.
Yes. It's interesting.
I think so. Thinking about sort of safety. So as a child, where do you feel safe and where would you go? And then as a teenager, that safety level changes. I did a recent exercise, said where would you go as a teenager? And I was like, actually, my safe space was my bedroom or in my house or in my garden. But when I was a kid, I would go to the field, I'd go to the park all on my own. So I think that change of development, brain changes, I think all of those sort of things can interact as well.
Mike, you wanted to come in, I think.
Yes, yeah, I was just wondering, is there an aspect of where people feel they have permission to go, and where they feel kind of invited and they're not going to get told off for being there, and you know, could that be a barrier as to why people don't feel they have the access? And also the kind of media that say teenagers are generally exposed to doesn't promote that sort of activity so much, I don't think. So it's not normalised, and I think it's normalising it is the key, and just making people know that they can do things.
Yeah, it's an interesting observation, isn't it? Do we kind of identify teenagers as threats, and then they interpret that as being not welcome? You know, because, you know, a group of teenage, dare I say, boys hanging around about the age of 17, probably most of them nearing 6 foot, bit intimidating. But but actually it's fine, and we should be fine with it, and perhaps we're not fine with it, and that perhaps the problem is us not being sufficiently welcoming. It was interesting. I was in Holland once on holiday, but as you do when you're in the Outdoor Recreation Network, you're always observing, aren't you? And I was met by a whole group of Dutch teenagers on their bikes zooming around, and it was a lovely experience. And I reflected that now happened when I was outdoors in the UK. They seemed perfectly comfortable and happy and having a great time. So perhaps it's something about our culture. Yeah. Yeah, somebody's put, it's going to be hard to answer the question without consulting young people themselves, and perhaps that's what we need to go and do, is do more research into what stops young people. I've got somebody else's hand up here and I can't see who it is. If you've got your hand up, it's not showing me who you are. I've just got a hand. Emma Watson.
Hiya, I hope you can hear me. I haven't got my camera on because I've got really bad signal. But yeah, I was just thinking that income is a big factor in young people as well. So where they grow up and if they've got the money to possibly afford a bike to go to the parks, or whether their parents have a car. Obviously, transport is quite an issue, as we mentioned already, about public transport. And I do think that if children gain a little bit of independence and have that money, then they're more likely to spend it on the bus to town rather than taking several buses to the local park. So I do think that location, income has like a really big factor in that.
Yeah. So I'm just conscious of time. Shall we move on to how do we work with this group? How do we work in partnership with this group? And possibly who else can we get? Who else can we involve? Who can help us work more with young people? Ryan, you're on mute.
It reminds us about that excellent presentation from Pammy yesterday about making sure, thinking about when you're trying to reach groups you want to work with, making sure you're being the one doing the grafting, and linking, I suppose, with youth groups and to enable that wow moment. Because I think about some of the young people we work with in London, and there are some amazing spaces like Hampstead Heath, a short train journey away, but if they've never been taken there and aren't shown the pathways or access or given that wow moment to kind of spur them to do that, then obviously there's no reason that they're going to, be motivated potentially to seek it out. So I suppose linking with existing groups to access those young people, but being the facilitator for those wow moments to hopefully forge that connection with nature and provide the opportunity and the accessibility.
Yeah, have you got an idea of how to reach existing groups? I mean, Cubs and Scouts and Guides and all of those are kind of obvious, and they go out anyway. But how do which groups are we not connecting with that we could connect with? Are there sort of youth groups that we should be connecting with?
To say kind of the area that we're working, kind of youth clubs with lots of kind of sort of adventure playgrounds and also potentially linking up with the youth service and trying to reach kind of the NEAT groups. I suppose linking with those existing organisations and networks.
You said NEAT groups.
Not in education and employment, or not in education, employment and training, I think it is. Please do correct me, someone, if I'm wrong.
No, that's fine. I just thought, and where would somebody find a NEAT group?
Well, as I said, it's not really a group I currently work with, but years ago I used to work for Groundwork, and we used to, when we did projects trying to link with the local youth service, we'd go through the council and speak to kind of youth workers and social workers within, you know, the local council to link with those young people and those groups to come on our projects. But I do want to say, I think what I felt at the time, and this was a long time ago, is that we would do these projects with these young people, which would be, you know, challenging but often very successful, but then there wasn't really the follow-up. You know, the funding would run out, and then, you know, I remember this one young guy saying to me, "Oh, this has been amazing, what next?" And I realised, you know, actually that at the time hadn't really been planned in. So I think that's absolutely key when working with these groups, that you've got the longer term vision of how you're going to continue, or which organisations are going to continue to support them. If, you know, you spark an excitement and love for nature, you need to be able to kind of facilitate that more long term if possible.
Yeah. Caroline, you wanted to come in. Caroline Fife?
Yep. Just trying to work out. Yep, there's my camera on. Yep, I work for Nature Scott. It was just to raise awareness of the Ramblers Scotland Out There Award initiative. They did some research asking young people what it was, you know, why they, well, first of all, they were very aware that they had an older audience participating in their activities. So they asked younger people, and they developed this award that developed the skills and provided them with the information, provided them with sort of clubs, you know, so that they had the sort of social contact, and really provided that sort of pathway to enable them to then do the activities on their own. So that's perhaps one example of you know, an organisation that has kind of reached out to young people. It's a slightly older, you know, age group, you know, the sort of probably the, you know, the 19 to sort of 26-year-olds, but, you know, that have the issues with transport and cost of activities, perhaps.
That's interesting. Yeah. I've got a couple of hands up. Sarah Moore?
Hi, I was just thinking about social services and children's services. You know, that would be an area where people could possibly link in more. I don't know what links are currently there, but, you know, there's obviously a lot of children, and you know, a lot of children have really suffered through the coronavirus and have ended up in the care system. So, you know, I think the outdoors for children who are going through that sort of dramatic change is really, really important. So it'd be good to sort of link into social services, children's services. That's what I was thinking.
That's good. Yeah. I'd just like to go to Jamie. You've made a comment in the chat. I'm not sure everybody's looking at the chat, but I think it'd be useful if you say something about that. Jamie Luck.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, yeah, I'm Jamie. I'm Youth Engagement Manager for the National Trust. So during lockdown, we've been working with a group of young people from Bristol and exploring what nature means to them and nature connection. And also talking about how the National Trust presents images of kind of nature and nature connection. And what they've been quite clear on is the comms that we offers nature as a place of kind of calmness and stillness, and also it being quite often like rural. So you travel to nature as opposed to it being something in your urban community or something on your doorstep. And for them, they want to feel like they can be anarchic and loud and playful in nature spaces. And so that was really interesting, their kind of reflections that the images we present don't connect with them. And then that can relate to something as simple as, do we feel like we could climb a tree at one of your places? Probably not. So that might be a really simple thing that a young person wants to do, is feel like they can be themselves in these nature spaces. And then the final reflection was they also felt like quite often organisations can present technology and nature as opposites, as opposed to tech and nature as being kind of mutual and complementary. So tech is bad, nature is good, for example. And that, the young people told us, that's not their kind of worldview.
That's fascinating. And I'm just thinking, they obviously haven't read your 13 things to do before you're 11 3/4, because one of them is climb a tree.
Mm.
Yeah, that obviously didn't get through. So yeah, something which I made my son do at about the age of 6, or encouraged him to do. I didn't quite make him. He didn't go very far. Yes. Yes, Sydney's made some comment about not making assumptions. And yes, someone else has said, I was just thinking how to take it to those who aren't members of organised groups, because lots of kids and young people aren't members of organised groups. So how do we reach them? Have you got any ideas? Colin Hardacre, you asked the question, and I'm going to say, can you think of any answers? Would you like to come on, Colin?
Yeah, I will, as my dog's finally rested just for a moment. We'll see how long that lasts. No, I'm still racking my brains. I'm in higher education. I'm at SRUC in Aberdeen, and I was actually discussing this with our first year students on the wildlife and conservation course on Monday. How do you reach people? How do you get to them? If you can't make them come to you, how do you take the mountain to them, sort of thing? And it stumped everyone in the class, unfortunately. You know, there's various ideas of doing organised events in very public areas and making it engaging in that sort of way, and attracting and trying to attach some follow-up action for them, or ways of actioning. There's also going into schools and promoting things like D&V or John Muir Award and things like that. But some people might think, you know, be put off by a perception of an immense amount of effort or whatever. But these things, they all come down to I think it was saying in the main group there as well, it's getting the right role models that show you can do it. It's maybe not as difficult as you think, and tying in with pretty much everything else, you know, other perceptual things. I think you mentioned, Pippa, earlier about the cars at the country park. Well, if everybody's all there, all Rabden Berghaus, then people think that's what they have to do, and then they see the price of this kit. It's all of them. So maybe when you have these events, just be in casual gear. I'm not talking Primark, but you know, casual, that sort of thing. I don't know, just really top of the head thoughts.
Yeah, casual gear. I'm in two minds, because in one respect, you want your staff on site to be instantly recognisable as staff, and so therefore a uniform helps. But then, is that going to be off-putting to certain groups? And I think, well, maybe when you go out to schools and things, you go in your just, dare I say, jeans and a t-shirt, because to be honest, that's what I go out in. I don't go out in my Rohan this and waterproof that. I walk in jeans. I know you're not supposed to, but I walk in jeans because that's what I've got. Emma Watson, I think you wanted to come in.
Hiya, yeah. I just wanted to say that I work with Denbighshire Countryside Service, working on the Nature for Health project, and we work with the Housing Association with Denbighshire Council, and I suppose there's a lot of councils that have the same. But what they do is they enable us to interact with communities that are deprived and lack green spaces, and then we're able to put on community days, gather funding, create groups, and enable them then to gather their own resources for things like kit for their children, and enable minibuses and trips away to have that wow factor. So I think that that's one way that we've really been able to connect with people and families that we might not have been able to have, especially at that young age before they go to high school as well, just to kind of give them that head start.
It's interesting you're working with a housing association. I wonder how many other organisations, sort of outdoor organisations, work with housing associations. Does anybody else do that? I'm not getting a yes, but I'm sure somebody else out there. Mike, did you want to come back in again? Your hand is still up.
Yes, thank you. I was just wanted to talk about trying to encourage people to engage with the outdoors, and a project that I'm working on at the moment is, we'll hopefully find that out. I don't know yet, it's only just started, but it's kind of working in a quite an urban area, but creating kind of waymarked routes around those areas of different lengths that connect up different parts of this particular small town. But in that, I'm kind of incorporating kind of micro green spaces where we hope to develop more kind of log stepping stones and bug hotels and things like that. And what I'm really hoping is then use that as a catalyst to then guide people further out of town into the little pockets of woodlands and so on that are nearby. You know, it will be a kind of a watch this space. It's Sport England funded and based in Oxfordshire, and I'm hoping that, you know, just simply kind of having you know, signs that run past somebody's front door that take them to somewhere interesting that they don't know yet will be a catalyst to get them making that further step onwards later on.
Yeah, I often thought that literally signposting, it really helps, and signposting in the middle of the town to the bit that's just on the edge, and because, you know, unless you happen to know, it's very difficult to find out, isn't it? So yeah, I do like that idea, and I'd be interested in finding out what kind of results it has, Mike.
Yes, yeah, there will be studies and so on it, and yes, that signposting comes back to that permission thing that I said about earlier. It's kind of, yes, you can go here, you're welcome here. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And is there any way to sort of signpost, particularly so, you know, young people know they're welcome, because they may kind of see the signs and go, well, that's for old fuddy-duddies, not for people like me.
Yes.
Going back to my country park example, big sign saying country park, and I thought, that's not me then.
Yeah, I think in the way that I'm going to be trying to design the signs is, you know, it's around a program of that, you know, combating childhood obesity. So the design of the signs is to try and make it attractive, and then also, you know, kind of painted markings on the way and things like that on the route. So, you know, trying to do that, but then also when we're communicating, we're working with the schools and you know, making sure it's those particular groups that know about it and know it's for them. Yeah,
I was reminded of the fish trail they have in Hull. If anybody's been up to Hull, they've got a fish trail. The only problem with that was the fish were put into the pavement, which was lovely, but they were so nice, people nicked them. So whatever you do, don't make it nickable or attractive to nick. So, I mean, they were lovely. I wanted to nick one. I resisted the temptation, but others didn't. Yeah, so Jamie said he's working with housing associations. Yep. Non-traditional ways of accessing nature and countryside are key for engaging young people. Sydney's commented. Sydney, do you want to come in?
Hello. Yeah, I was just thinking about was it Colin's question about how we take nature in the countryside to young people who aren't already in organised groups, and I think it's I work for the RSPB and I'm also a young person and done quite a lot of work around like engaging with young people, and I think one of the things sort of stopping meaningful engagement with young people is the idea that it has to follow the same traditional format of engaging with nature, which is going out for a walk in the countryside, and that's how you engage with nature. Whereas if we can take nature into spaces not specifically organised groups, but spaces that young people are already interested in. So like there's been loads of studies that show young people are more interested in issues around like mental health, social justice, the climate crisis, obviously pop culture. These are all areas that nature fits into really well. Like there's already kind of ready-made connections there, like ready to be grasped. So I think that's like a really useful way of thinking about how we can take nature to young people, is like taking it to their space and to their areas of interest rather than expecting them to come to us and assuming that they will be interested in engaging with nature in the same way that the older generations are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And actually lots of pop music has actually reflected interest in nature, and dare I say, Paved Paradise and Put Up a Parking Lot was one of the first songs that inspired me. But pop, you know, it's still in pop culture, like you say, and I think, yeah, perhaps we're not just exploiting that enough. And I think there's, I'm trying to remember which person it was wrote a song about nature in lockdown, which really struck a chord. And if anybody can tell me which one it was, I'd be very grateful. Yeah, we need to proactively take it to them in the nicest way. And yes, Sydney, I got back from there. So yes, we need to go where they are rather than expecting them to come to us. Right, we've just got a few minutes left. So what I'd just like to do is move on to the last question, which was, we were hoping to encourage people to reflect on things that they can do themselves. So maybe something you've learned from the conference the last 2 days, which means you want to do something differently. I was wondering, we said 3 things, but it doesn't have to be 3 things. 1 would be good. Does anybody want to say anything that they want to do as a result of this conference, and maybe things that they think they can take forward? I'm putting you on the spot here, I'm afraid. But does anybody want to sort of say, you know, I've learnt this and I think I'm going to do something differently, or I've found it really useful and I've never thought of housing associations before, or yep, I will, you know, we'll run a fair next year. I've got some hands up, so let's see if I can find the hands up. It's this Sarah Moore. Hi Sarah, we can't hear you because you're on mute.
Oh, hello. Yeah, I found the diversity talk where the lady was really clear. We just get on Google sites to make that in was really helpful, because it's very obvious, but it's not obvious always. So, you know, the fact she said she just literally Googles things, I thought that was really useful tip for everything, whether it's disability, children, ethnic minorities, whatever, you know. So I thought that was just, you know, get on Google and just make calls and go from there. Sounds great.
Yeah. Amy said we need to be uncomfortable in their space. Sydney said, I'm going to share my findings with the rest of my team and have a discussion around what we can do as a team to improve inclusivity in our area of work. Fabulous. Rowan, you've got your hand up. Do you want to share? Or is your hand up from earlier? Rowan Knox, you're on mute.
I didn't think I did have my hand up. I thought I'd taken it off from earlier. Sorry. I'm just trying to think of what I'm going to do next, but nothing's come to mind so far. I'll let you know.
That's okay. No worries. Sarah, you've still got your hand up. Do you want to come back in and say anything else?
Sorry, I think it was just still up. I put it down.
That's okay. I'll just ask, is there anyone so far who's not said anything on the chat or not had an opportunity to say something, who wants to come in on any of the stuff we've covered in the breakout room from earlier on, the barriers facing the group, how do we work with them, who else we need to involve, or what you might do differently? Does anyone else want to come in who's not had a chance? Just speak.
Sorry, Pippa, just I have spoken, but just something I just thought of. I really liked what Jamie was saying earlier about making sure that for young people, nature is a place they can be themselves. And so providing those opportunities and yeah, it kind of links with what another person was saying about not kind of necessarily going down sort of traditional routes of linking with nature. And There's something else, but I've forgotten it now. But yeah, I suppose, yeah, that's it. And not kind of being presuming, like obviously speaking to young people about what they're interested in and what they want to do, rather than kind of presuming you know what they want, I suppose. That consultation.
Fantastic, that's really good. Yes, the nature is a place they can be themselves. Yes, I mean, I have some local woods that I walk in, and last summer I was doing my quite regular walk, and I got to some ponds where they're sort of the place I go to, because they're a sort of destination, and there was a group of young lads hanging around, about 5 or 6 of them on their bikes, and I thought, it's wonderful, and they saw me and they took off, and I thought, what does that say about the relationship between adults and kids? Because I thought it was great, but they kind of looked at me and went, we think we're going to get into trouble. I could see it. Oh, that was my interpretation of why they, well, maybe they didn't want to be hanging around an old fogey. Maybe they're just going home for their tea. But I did worry that they thought that somehow I would be telling them off. And I think, I don't want to tell you off. I want to say, great, oh, it's fantastic that you're here. So yeah, Mike Clay said, I want to think a bit more about creating better outdoor opportunities and natural diversity for well-being rather than acres of well-mowed, little uses expanses of grass. Bring more wild nearer to those who need it. Yay, Mike, I love it. And Amy said she'll be sharing the inclusive cycling with Pedal All at New Forest to see if there's any further developments, share experience. Amy, there's Cycling UK have one closer to you. I'm struggling to remember where it is, but if you contact Cycling UK, they can probably take you to one, I think it's in Hampshire, where you can see a group of volunteers running inclusive cycling, particularly for autistic people. That might be helpful to you. Right, I've had the reminder that we need to rejoin, and any minute now we're going to get a thing saying you will be returning to the main thing. So if anybody's got anything last minute you want to say before we get whisked back to the main conference, this is your chance. No one's coming in. Do you know what? Silence online is really, I feel like I have to stop talking, otherwise nobody's going to come in, but I do find it hard. Feel the need to fill that silence. So if you want to just take the last minute, oh, I think we're about to get whisked back in again. So hopefully see you all in the plenary, and good luck for anybody who's entered their photograph into the competition. We will be announcing, or you'll be voting on who gets to win the prize very shortly. Thank you huge amount for participating in the breakout session, and I hope you found it useful, and looking forward to seeing wonderful things from you guys in the future, at some future ORN conference, when hopefully you can come back and tell us all the things you did as a result of this one today.